Have you ever heard of the super violent anime Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya? It released a measly 2 decades ago. You probably have, otherwise you wouldn't have clicked on an absolute nobody's channel. Well, I've seen it. I got drawn in by the dance animation that I came across. But to my surprise, the show ended up having a much higher artistic level than I thought it would have. Sadly, it does not manage to keep that up. This is a show whose ups are very high and whose lows are stupidly low. It is both a great anime and an absolutely terrible one. Let me explain. And before I begin, please let me note that I watched the anime in chronological order. That may not have been the right decision, but I did it unknowingly, just clicking on episode 1 without doing any research. The big issue is that the show basically ends at episode 6. That's it, the plot is kinda over there. The story does continue, but it's honestly just a status quo for the rest of the 28 episodes. Because the finale already happens in episode 6. That's right, this show has 28 episodes. And it's already over by the 6th one due to light novel to anime shenanigans. Now what happens then, you might ask? Well, 7 takes a bit of a break, but gives us a cool fight scene, so I don't mind. Number 8 then gives us an insight into Haru's backstory, and we learn quite a lot of things, so it's time well spent. Afterwards there's a sports episode and the island vacation duology. You end up kinda bored there, having essentially watched 3 episodes of zero plot progression or importance. And with you, I mean I, because I obviously don't know what you're thinking. So we're now to the point where you kinda want something to happen. And then season 2 rolls in and hits you with the endless aid, 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 the endless aid. I knew that this was coming and it was even worse than expected. First off, the episode was already boring the first time around. And then you see it 7 more times. And to give them credit where credit is due, these maniacs actually animated this 8 times. To my complete surprise, every single shot is unique, and you can see this very well in Asahina's and Haru's outfits. Nagato only ever wears a school uniform and the boys are not so weird, with one honorable exception. The angles also often change, and it is insane how many different ways there are to animate things, but other than that, things are basically the same. Just imagine a Groundhog Day where the protagonist doesn't remember the loops, thus leading to the exact same events repeating every time. That's the endless 8. And while there is one character that does remember everything, it is sadly the character that would not try to do anything about it. Nagato remembers and is scrapped to suffer from it, and maybe she did try things the 15,000 times they went through this, but she doesn't feel that distress. Show don't tell stupid, even with Nagato. There should have been some visual indicator of her suffering, instead of just Kion's narration. Other than that, the only sense of progression are the ever-increasing feelings of déjà vu Kion has, but loops 2 to 7 are still perfectly switchable. Loop 1 starts slow, because all the time loop shenanigans are reserved for the following 7, making it somewhat unique, yet it's still kinda boring. The episode that is repeated 8 times is the worst one. Great. And of course it is. In the original story, which only goes through 1 loop for the viewers, the time loop shenanigans are the plot. If you remove that, you end up with an episode without even a filler plot where absolutely nothing happens. Loop 2 is the best one because it immediately acknowledges that yes, you have seen this episode before with the déjà vu starting. You see the same episode waiting for something to happen, and this time your patience is rewarded as something does happen. He gets called by Asahina and Koizumi in the night, and a new conversation occurs where they tell him they figured out that they are in a loop. Episode 2 is great that it has just enough progression to be interesting, but still feeling like you're in a time loop with them. Unfortunately, the progression stops afterwards, as 3 to 7 are just 2 all over again, with the biggest difference being which 4 minutes of episode 1 get speed through for the conversation to happen. You get to see them figuring out that they are in a loop over and over again, while doing the exact same actions and failing. And Nagato does absolutely nothing to make them change things up, so they're doomed to fail. This isn't a we tried everything and still failed thing, they tried nothing and are all out of ideas. And to be fair, it's not Kuyun's, Koizumi's and Asahina's fault, it's Nagato's. Why doesn't she try to do anything? Did the mothership or whatever it's called go, this is fine. Let's just let time loop for all of eternity. There's nothing that could possibly go wrong with that endeavor. I know the mothership retains its memories, but still, aren't they at least a bit annoyed that they get reset every 2 weeks? They've been looping for centuries. Even a robot's patience must run out eventually, right? And you might say that it has been 15,000 times, I'm sure she tried at some point. But look at the finale, she clearly hasn't. So the only one truly going through a time loop is you. At first it is even a bit joyful. Sure, let's go for another round. It's like a drug trip of sorts. Seeing the subtitle changes is interesting for a bit. You ended with the ability to just ignore the subtitles and still know what they say. But after round 4 you just end up bored. And after 6 you're completely done with it. When that 8 episode starts, You're fully dead inside, just waiting for it to finally end. You're mad at the show for waiting all these episodes, and are just frustrated. And sure, at the end of every episode you can see Kieran's frustration too, but he still has a day left. Because Leaf tried to change things. What stops him from just calling Harry and hanging out with her? He just gives up. Contrary to us viewers, he has the power to change things. Is Harry really that unreachable that when she exits that door he just cannot be contacted anymore? Heck, 15,000 loops been quite enough of that to just tell Harry. He isn't doing this intentionally after all. So episode 8 finally arrives, and it's just the same thing again. You'd expect a big finale after all of this, and sure, there is a finale, but it's just kinda underwhelming. They give a grand total of 5 minutes to it. That's the entire finale, the rest is just repetition. Again. And the solution is that they spent the last day doing homework together. That's it. That's the great finale. To say I'm disappointed is an understatement. It really took them 15,000 tries to figure that out. The solution is so dumb, it would have been fine if the whole thing were just one loop as it was in the original, but for an 8 episode arc, it simply isn't enough. But what is the justification for this? They call it art. Really? Art is pissing your entire fanbase off because you couldn't figure out a better way to fill those 8 episodes. Art? That's not art, that's laziness and trolling. This could have been great. The concept of suffering in the time we were alongside the cast sounds great, but it fails horribly if we are the only one suffering. The only one remembering things. Nagato does absolutely nothing to change things. And for the show this way, our attack on my sanity was a bad thing, as I exited the loop with a pretty sour mode, feeling hurt and attacked by the show. Suspension of disbelief is a fickle thing, and if a show dares to attack me so openly, it crumbles easily. I was no longer so generous to let the show get away with things I've ignored so far. After I've been hurt and wounded by the show, I was expecting something great to make up for putting me through this. The next big arc, the size of Haruhi Suzumiya, was not that. So, where do I begin? This arc follows Haruhi making a movie and forcing the brigade along, and it suffers from a surf lack of plot. Nothing really important happens in it. Big thing is that Haruhi is acting more like an ass than usual, being extremely unlikable. And I already didn't have the greatest opinion on her to begin with. And that's pretty much it. There's also Haruhi's powers being a bit out of control, but then that's it. After pushing her usual victim Asana into a lake and dragging her, she finally gets some pushback from Koyon. Took him long enough, with him almost beating her, if Koizumi didn't stop him. This sadly doesn't go on for long, because Koizumi convinces the ever-spineless Koyon to go back to her, and they go on like nothing happened, with Haruhi learning nothing. Well, that was a waste of time. And sure, she doesn't drug people anymore afterwards, but she didn't that before either. All that happened in this arc is that Haruhi become an even bigger asshole than usual for no reason, and turning back into a normal amount of asshole later. In the final episode of the arc, something interesting finally happens with Asana telling her her interpretation of Haruhi, and Koizumi seeming creepy and passive-aggressive, trying to weirdly break Kieran's trust in Asana. Plot! Where are you these past 15 episodes? I missed you! But don't get too excited as the plot then immediately leaves again. All that remains is Kieran trying once again to tell Haruhi the truth, something he already promised to do in episode 6, and failing. Because we can't change the status quo now, can we? This entire arc is just more filler. After graciously set through the entirety of the Andesite, this show rewards me with this. So of the 14 episodes of season 2, 13 are a waste of time. After all that failure, only 4 episodes remain. The last ones from season 1. They're good, but it's weird to see the old opening again after so long. Begin with the movie they made, which was originally the first episode before the shuffling. The episode was great and the context doesn't destroy it in any way, but I believe that it served just as well of a job in its intended spot at the beginning. The original novels had them in the current order, so they still work well, but honestly, the context is really unnecessary. We got 2 additional episodes, both are good, better than most side episodes before the Endless 8, but not good enough to improve my sour mood. Things that didn't bother me back then now pulled me out of it. And then the final episode arrives. It's surprisingly calm and a weird one. It includes Koyon walking through the snow, Nagato reading for 3 minutes or so, and Haruhi once again abusing Asahina. Don't worry, I'll get into that. It also proves that she has learned nothing. The episode is strangely fitting for the series. No big finale and nothing of such. Just a calm snowy day with nothing really happening. Does it change my mood? No. But it feels so strangely right. And it is experimental in all the right ways. Basically, season 2 feels like a cheap add-on to season 1. With them having to order their episodes around to make it less noticeable. In hindsight, I'd probably watch a release order and skip all the episodes of season 2 after the first one, because they're absolutely not worth it. With the chronological order, there are just 20 episodes of filler, after the plot ends with number 8. And no matter how essential some say these episodes are to the series, they're really not worth your time. If you like the cast a whole lot, you can add episodes 25 to 28 to the mix, but even they are not necessary. I truly wonder how they were given so many episodes when they do nothing with most of them. What I have left out till now is the movie that takes place after the show, Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. And there isn't much to say about it other than, it's great and the best part of the show. Yeah, this is mostly a rant video, I'm not really good at talking about shows positively, but the movie is great. It is the show I fell in love with in the first 8 episodes, having finally returned. It was the apology I needed after having gone through the endless 8 and all that filler. The plot returned after so long, and it did in a way I haven't even thought possible. It finally explores the anomalies in a deeper way than normal is good, and does in a beautifully directed way. I wonder what the director does now. Oh. But yeah, the movie is awesome. Can I go back to ranting about the series now? We still have the cast to go after. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but some of the characters are not consistently referred to by first or last name, so I'll go with Kieran's term for them. Honestly, kinda weird for such things to get acknowledged in an anime. Usually everyone always gets referred to by one name for the viewer's convenience. Haruhi is the center of the story, literally. Everything revolves around her, both on a narrative level as well as a literal level. The issue with her is that she lacks the appeal to fascinate the audience. Her initial state of being annoyed with the staleness of the world is intriguing, but after episode 6 that arc is kinda over and she decides to make the most out of it. Which means billing her companions to get her fun. She's kinda just an ass. She mistreats the entire brigade and always gets things done her way. She's bossy and basically the worst kind of thunder towards Kyon. She has a nice moments towards Kyon, who's also the only person to ever stand up to her, but other than that there's no reason to like her. If it wasn't for her being God, basically the others would probably have all left her by now. Kyon is the protagonist of the story, not Haruhi, this guy. It surprised me at least. I expected Haruhi to be the protagonist of the anime named after her, but I was so wrong. I also expected the anime to be about the brigade meeting some supernatural forces and helping someone every episode. Boy was I wrong. But anyways, as he is the protagonist, what are his goals, his motivations? Oh, he has none. He has zero agency and does everything because of Haruhi. He's also the narrator, so we get to see everything from his perspective as well as hear his thoughts. He does have witty comments but still no drive of his own, which is kinda bad for the protagonist. Everything is either initiated by Haruhi or done because of Haruhi. What I do have to give him credit for is that he is the only one to ever push back on Haruhi. Everyone else just does as she pleases, but he is spineless and never goes far enough. There's also supposed to be a romance between him and Haruhi, but he really doesn't like her, he likes Asahina. In the beginning he also really wants for things to be normal, but the movie finally gave him a character arc, making him accept the cause. Koizumi is an agent from a mysterious organization, which is never elaborated on, and his sole priority is to keep Haruhi from being upset, so the world is safe. He is also an escort, but can only use his powers under specific circumstances that never arise after episode 7. He's also kinda scummy and you truly wonder if he has anything else going in his life besides Haruhi, considering that he's still with her even in the movie. He's easily the least likable character, never showing any care about them whatsoever, and his sole existence is to have conversations about Haruhi with Kyon. That's his sole reason to exist, he never really does anything besides that. The only other point that I can give him is that he's usually in a good mood, but he might be faking it or something. I don't know, the anime could have fleshed him out more in the 20 filler episodes, but chose not to. But he never seems to care about anyone besides Haruhi, and never really interacts with anyone besides Kyon, talking mostly about Haruhi. All of his interactions with the other characters are mostly him choosing to do nothing. It also doesn't help that his actions are unhealthy for Haruhi. I get that he's trying to avoid Esper work, but never confronting her on anything will definitely backfire later. Plus, being an ass so he doesn't have to do his work doesn't sound like a great justification for his actions. Overall, he seems like a character that could get interesting, but just doesn't. The show never explores him in depth. Also, Kyon and Koizumi look almost identical. I know that the girls are the appeal of such shows, but still, they deserve a bit more than this, don't they? The cute one, Haruhi literally calls her that, and the in and out of universe justification for being there is literally to be cute. In a sexual sense that is. And oh boy do the creators make their point clear. She gets repeatedly abused by Harry, something she really dislikes, and forced into various revealing costumes. To think that this blatant fanservice is something the show considers fine isn't great to begin with, but the way they're handling it is just about the worst way imaginable. Making Harry force her while making her endlessly scream not only makes the audience feel bad about it, it also makes one root against the cause, that being Harry. All that makes this entire situation feel way worse than shows with way more revealing stuff. It's not the fanservice that is the big issue here, but the literal depiction of sexual abuse on screen by the character we are supposed to like. And you might say that this is just a dumb comedy show, but let me ask you this. Does a dumb comedy show force you to the same episodes 8 times for the art? No, it fucking doesn't. They can switch between art and not art whenever they so desire. I have high expectations after the endless 8. Kern does fight against this a little bit, but largely unsuccessful. Plus he also sexualizes her quite a bit as well, but has to block because he's male. But he does have a secret collection of nudes of her taken by Harry, so that makes him a really bad defender. And in the final episode of the series, we are shown Harry's ingenious solution to this meager defense. Send him on a run so she can go on her business undisturbed. Really? Is that how you end your series? And look at all the help the rest of the queue doesn't give her. Harry has learned nothing and Koizumi and Nagato are assholes. I truly hate how the show fully acknowledges that male and female sexual abuse exists and is bad, but a woman doing it to another woman is perfectly fine. The guys always leave the room whenever Asahina changes, and while I don't want to exclude bisexuals from women's spaces, but in this case, get that bisexual creep out of there alongside them. What else is there to say about her? She is shy, cries a lot, and is honestly just there as a counterwife for those that find Harry trash. She is also a time traveler. Yep, that's a gimmick. Took me a long while to get to it, didn't it? She uses her powers more often than Koizumi and there are time travel shenanigans with her. Her consididotesne whenever she gets questions is also cute. Kudos for the only smart use of Endless 8 here. I'm now forever cursed to think of her saying swear words. She also has an adult version that shows up every now and then that then changes her cute for sexy. But what she lacks is depth. We know nothing about the future she comes from, and her every action is kinda predictable. Unlike Koizumi, she isn't solely focused on Harry to that extreme degree, so I have to give her that. She just really suffers from the end of plot at episode 8, and the Harry hyperfocus, but unlike Koizumi, she did get some attention from the movie. I would really like to know more about the future that she comes from, but there's nothing. Nothing at all. Nagato is an android from a Skynet-like hiveman, whose name I have forgotten and can't be bothered enough to look up. So let's call it Mothership. She was created solely to observe Harry, and collect as much data as possible, because to them, data is power, allowing them to do magic-like stuff. She has the coolest powers of the bunch and is usually the only one to get to use them, for being the one that resolves everything. She's also an alien technically, but does it really matter where Skynet came from? Her issue is that, while she is the character given the most attention of the three, she's also the flattest one. She's a robot and acts like one, only speaking short sentences and rarely acting at all. There is a charm to that, but for a comedy series like Harry's in the middle of its runtime, it doesn't work. She does have emotion somewhere, but the show breaks the rules of show don't tell and screen narrates the information, because it is impossible to tell. And she once again suffers from her alien heritage being underexplored. What I do have to give them is that she does have a counterpart with different opinions that is played with for an episode, so there is at least something. And of course there is one additional thing. The movie focused on her, and that's great. We are finally given emotions in action and I love it. That's about all of them. There are some recurring side characters, but they are not really important, so I'll just mention my favorites. Kieran has an adorable sister who always makes me aw. It's so adorable how she apparently wakes him up every day. Always nice to see her. I wonder why you never go into the Others family. And there's Tsuya, who is the best girl. I'm not gonna try and justify that choice, but she is. The others like Kieran's friend and a couple that appear less regularly, but I won't talk about them. The cast has potential, but there are some factors dragging it down. The first is the hyper-focus on Harry. Everything every character does must always be related to Harry, ultimately dragging them all down. Kusumi is the worst victim of this, receiving no special attention whatsoever, but all the others also lack any goals of their own. If not for Harry, they'd have nothing going on in their lives, and I think even Harry is hurt as a character by this. being the one forced to drive all conflicts takes a toll on her character. Let this crew shine on their own. They'll be much stronger for it. And not being around Kari 24/7 makes her seem more intriguing as well. Honestly, a big reason for the movie to be so great is that Harry is absent from it, allowing Nagato and Kyun to shine, and even Kasahina is given more depth. Next would be our protagonist. The light novel was narrated by him, so we must follow him at all times during the plot. This makes the focus on Harry even worse, because we now have a plot always focusing on one character, always seen from the perspective of another character. And Kyun simply has not much going on. In a world where everyone else is someone special, Kyun is just kinda boring to be around 24/7. I get that he's supposed to be the self-insert, but I consume media for characters that have more going on in their life than me, not less. He always reacts, he never acts. Why isn't there never something he wants to do? Everything the brigade does is defined by Harry. Can't our main character not do something for himself? Does he have no hopes, no dreams? We get narration by him all the time, yet he never expresses any ambitions whatsoever. He's just an incredibly boring person. He's empty for being the one person we spend the most time with. He should truly have a bit more character. And finally, it's them never truly developing on the concept. The formula is Harry causes chaos accidentally and the rest of the brigade cleans it up. This is never developed upon. There are no mention of how unhealthy this dynamic is. And what is when Harry does find out? What will become of the friendship? No, the world will truly be at danger. And do they think that they can keep this facade up for all of eternity? And noticing is not a possibility, but an eventuality. The show never thinks about that. And another thing, the show always treats the world like it is great the way it is. It never acknowledges that there are faults to it, with the honorable exception of the movie that at least acknowledges the world as boring, but it never thinks outside of the box of high school students. The possibilities of a god go way beyond the confines of a bunch of high schoolers. There are children in Africa starving to death, and wars being waged. Why not let her fix it? This entire ideological counterpoint to the brigade's ideology is never discussed. There could easily be an antagonistic group trying to do that. However, with the exception of one character that gets dealt with quickly, the brigade never gets confronted by anyone. Honestly, the show just never fully explores its concept despite having the time for it, and would rather have you sit through the same episode 8 times. This show suffers from trying to be too many things at once. It tries to be a slice of life, an exploration of what it means to have a god around. These elements clash, and then there's the supposed artwork that is the Endless Eight. All these elements don't go along. It makes an in-depth message about something, and then it has Asahina molested by Harry for the funny. It never makes the choice if it wants to be high art or low art, and it is only ever one at a time. The first 6 episodes are narrative driven. It is only after 8 episodes have passed that the comedy slice of life emerges. It is simply not the show I fell in love with, and as the characters and actions can contradict with serious stuff, they can't ever be truly great. Harry must always be pleased, or the world ends. That works for the serious stuff, but for the more comedic, simple episode, that's created an unbearable limitation, as the audience expects karma to hit Harry that simply never comes. And the more in-depth story I fell in love with doesn't return until the movie. That is simply too long. And the Endless Eight truly don't help. What the show needs is to decide what it wants to be. It can't do both. If you believe it or not, despite all my negative comments, I truly enjoyed the show when it was at its best. But all that just makes me more angry that there's so much garbage in it. If you wanna call my opinion nitpicky, then yes, I get it. And there's something to be said about a show that makes you think. That's always a good thing. But honestly, my previous reviewers, I just needed to grasp the spark of motivation when it came, or I'd still be doing nothing. Anger is truly a motivator without question. And yes, the full story might be better than this, and may include many elements I criticize here. Maybe I'll read the manga one day. I read shitty manga all the time after all. I won't bother with the light novels. Harry is not good enough for me to start reading those. The spin-off shows, maybe one day. If I'm in the mood, I might try them. But if I ever were to rewatch the Harry series, I'd watch the first 8 episodes, maybe 9, to get a feeling of how the rest goes, and then the movie. Or maybe season 1 in release order, and the first episode of season 2, and then the movie. Because the majority of the show simply isn't worth my time. Harry can be an incredible show, sometimes. But most of the time it just isn't. So if anyone has actually made it through all of this, I applaud you and humbly thank you for your time. It truly means a lot to me. I'm well aware that this video lacks in quality. That my voice sounds terrible, and I'm honestly kind of stiff at reading. Plus, it's very obvious that I'm reading off from the script most of the time. Not right now. People probably tell that. Yeah. This video here was also a bit too much for me. I mean, it's 30 minutes in length, I guess. I can't actually tell due to the way I record this right now, but I think I overwhelmed myself a bit with the first one. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be decent. It's okay if it's bad the first time around. You've gotta make something bad to make something good. The important thing is to learn. I'll improve in the future. I always wanted to make video essays. Now I can. It's not a good one. It's slower than it should have gone, but I made it. That's all that needs to be done. But for now, that's all from me. Have a good day!